So Angela Rye, in her new podcast episode, has some damning claims against her former colleague, Chris Cuomo. Not only that, her podcast co-host, Andrew Gillum, is speaking out about what happened to him, accusing the men that he was with that night of slipping something in his drink, which subsequently ruined his political and public career. Welcome back to the Kempire channel, your #1 source for pop culture news and music, entertainment, reality TV, and so much more. As always, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. So Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum have a new podcast called Native Land Pod. And I actually think this is a great idea, especially with the political arena that we will be delving into this year. We have some major elections happening here in the United States. And I thought this was actually a really great idea. You remember we reported on Tiffany Cross losing her job several months ago. So it's nice to see her come and be a part of this podcast, Angela Rye as well. But Andrew Gillum, as you also know, sort of like dipped out of public life after losing the election, the governorship in Florida. And then the major scandal that surrounded him in 2020. Subsequently, he came out as bisexual. His poor wife had to do an interview and stand by his side at the time. But before we get into that, Angela Rye, during this first episode, is revealing that Chris Cuomo sent her inappropriate texts based off an Instagram post that she had posted, referring to her as tinsel crotch. Let me tell you something. The amount of Googling, smoogling, I was like, what is this? Is this a term that I'm missing out on? No. Let me explain. So our friends over at The Guardian write this. They said the former CNN host Chris Cuomo is accused of sending explicit texts to their then colleague Angela Rye about a picture she posted on social media, with Rye connecting the incident to later not having her contract renewed to the TV network. The former CNN political commentator shared her experience involving Cuomo during an episode of her new podcast, Native Land Pod, describing it as one of the most embarrassing, humiliating experiences I had. She says, my story is one that I never thought I'd tell and sits at the intersection, frankly, of power and harassment. Rye alleged that Cuomo sent her an inappropriate message about a bikini photo she had posted to Instagram. So on New Year's Day in 2021, Rye posted a picture of herself wearing a gold sequined bikini. Cuomo later took a screenshot of the image, and she alleges privately sent it to Rye with the comment, "Happy New Year, tinsel crotch." Mind you, this is a married man. Mind you, when he was fired from CNN, I can't tell you the amount of black women who were like, oh my gosh, don't let Chris Cuomo go. Chris Cuomo's great. So Angela said on the podcast episode that aired on January 11th that she had been, quote, stunned. I read and reread the message dozens of times, trying to understand if I somehow brought this on myself. I felt like the safest place I had on a show on CNN had been compromised. Rye said that she did not respond to Cuomo's message for 2 days, despite texts from Cuomo asking for the two of them to call and discuss work. Rye said that she had feared that she would risk everything if she called Cuomo out for his remarks at the time, and she said nothing to the company. She says, I cannot begin to tell you how much I felt like even now I feel like a coward, Rye said, becoming emotional as she recounted the story to her fellow podcasters Tiffany Cross, a former MSNBC host, and Andrew Gillum, a former Democratic gubernatorial candidate for Florida from 2018.
A network exec had already told me they didn't see me as a host, despite my hosting a very successful podcast and hosting award-winning news specials on BET. This was my chance to prove them wrong. Can't I just ignore this indiscretion? It all began on New Year's Day when I posted a picture of myself looking forward to the new year in a gold sequin bikini on Instagram. Cuomo screenshot the image and said, Happy New Year, tinsel crotch. Stunned, I read and reread the message a dozen times, trying to understand. If I somehow brought this on myself, since whatever you post on social is fair game, right? I teared up, like now, then the tears flowed. I felt like the safest place I had on a show on CNN had been compromised. I ignored it, just hoping it would go away, or even more, did I imagine this? But I didn't. A few hours later, he said hello, I didn't respond for 2 more days despite his plea the next day to call because he wanted to discuss work. I tried to punt until after the Georgia runoffs, asking a week later if he still wanted to discuss his work idea despite him mentioning tinsel bikini and tinsel bottom along the way. As I think about this, it feels so fucking small compared to what other women in the workplace experience. But I was afraid to speak up. Between New Year's and my follow-up, an insurrection happened on Capitol Hill where I feared I would lose loved ones. I felt like if I called him out, I was risking everything I was finally starting to build with the network. And as someone who is known for being courageous, I cannot begin to tell you how much I felt like, or even now feel like a coward.
So like I said to you before, when the term came up, I was like, what the hell is that? But then I looked at the photo and I see what he was trying to do. But that's not the point. The point is, in entertainment, although this is not entertainment, but in this world of entertainment and news, there's always sort of this really thin line of inappropriate versus appropriate. And we've talked about this before when discussing other situations within celebrity news or pop culture news. And we have to remember, this is her work colleague. This is her work colleague. This is also a married man. So any reference to her private area or any reference to her personal Instagram is inappropriate. And like I said, I felt like when Chris Cuomo was let go because of things that he did behind the scenes in regards to his brother, that's a whole other story. I felt like there were more than ever black women were the ones like, oh my gosh, you can't let Chris Cuomo go. He needs to have his job back. I love Chris Cuomo. Only for us to find out that this is the way that he would treat a colleague, which also makes me wonder, would he have done this to anyone else that he was working with? Maybe he would have. But regardless of that, you are in a position of power. Because remember, Angela wasn't a full-time CNN anchor over there. Chris Cuomo was. Chris Cuomo also wielded a level of influence and power over at CNN. Yes, he was let go, but he still had more power over at CNN than Angela. Angela, who I'm sure if she was giving advice to anyone else, would have said, no, you need to report this. You need to speak out about this. Until you're in that moment, until you're the actual victim of a situation. I've already seen other people talking about this on social media, and people have been really disgusting in regards to her telling this story. My thing is, I'm glad she told it, and it's unfortunate, and I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because I feel like what Chris Cuomo was let go from only was a smidgen of what we knew. Because we also understand, especially HR backgrounds, shout out to our human resources folks, we understand when an investigation happens, these companies make sure that they have enough to say, legally, we're letting you go. And I believe Chris is still in litigation with CNN about his termination. Sidebar, Don Lemon did mention that he's going to start his own show. Congrats. I told you, I think Don Lemon should have a daytime talk show, but apparently he's doing his own thing on another platform. Also, so one of the other things, when this crew, Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum, dropped by the Breakfast Club, they, of course, had to bring up Andrew Gillum and the scandal that surrounded him from 2020 when he was discovered with these 2 other individuals, these 2 men in a hotel room where clearly one person had overdosed and Andrew seemed inebriated. So in this interview with the Breakfast Club, Andrew says that he believes that he was slipped something. He had all intentions of just going out, having a drink, and he feels like he was slipped something.
What I would say if I were telling the truth about the situation, I would compare it to you deciding that you want to go out to a club for whatever reason, for giving your motivation. But the main motivation was you want to have a good time.
Absolutely.
You wanted to be seen, enjoy yourself for whatever opportunity you could. And when you were there, someone slipped your drink a Quaalude, and everything from the point of you having had that drink to you waking up the next day is a mystery to you. Mm. If we were of different genders, we might talk about this even more differently. Mm-hmm. But I made a choice to go somewhere at 5 o'clock in the afternoon with the expectation of leaving in 30 minutes. And after my drink, I don't have a memory for 6 hours And every picture, every video, everything we've collected since that was taken of me shows me, for the duration of that time, lifeless looking, with no ability to give consent, approval, or anything else. And so, put myself in that situation. Yes, we all make choices. I chose this gas station to get gas, and I know they sometimes shoot it up. I chose this highway express over this one thinking it would get me there quicker. So yes, we all make choices. But if you get in an accident along the way, I'm not going to say that you want to go to the club, something happened to you, whatever, but it was your fault because you put yourself in the situation. What you put yourself in the situation to do was to enjoy yourself, to have a good time, to dance. And what resulted from that was something that looked very, very different.
As you know, since the scandal, Andrew has come out as, quote, bisexual. So, I had to kind of remind myself, because I was looking at this interview. I was like, Andrew, this is interesting way to flip what may have happened instead of really taking ownership for what you decided to do. But then I was like, well, I wouldn't have been surprised. Andrew Gillum at the time, before he lost the gubernatorial race to DeSantis, he really was a rising star in the Democratic Party. Do I find it maybe shocking that he could have been slipped something? Was this all intentional? Possibly. Or is this just Andrew trying to find a reason to sort of like change the narrative that has surrounded his career? Maybe. So, I had to kind of remind myself after seeing him talk about this, and he did say this to GQ a couple of years ago after this incident. So I had to kind of remind myself what happened. So first of all, the Miami Beach Police Department did release photos and videos taken the night former Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum was found inside a South Beach hotel room with a reputed male escort and a suspected drug. We'll just say that. So none of the photos or videos, however, appear to show a clear image of Gillum, the 2018 Democratic nominee for Florida governor who bowed out of public life, at least temporarily, until now, after the scandal broke back then. So the department released the materials Wednesday in response to public records requests from the Tallahassee Democrat and other news outlets. The department said that it redacted some footage it considered exempt under Florida public record laws. The materials included photos taken inside the hotel room, which circulated online weeks after a British tabloid got a hold of them. Police body cam videos, 911 recordings, and previously released incident reports. The photos and video were taken early the morning of March 13th after police and paramedics were called to the high-rise hotel in response to the reported overdose. So according to this report from the Tallahassee Democrat, police found Gillum in room 1107 with two men, Travis Dyson, the reputed escort, and Aldo Mejias, a self-described Gillum friend who paid for the room, according to police reports. When officers arrived, paramedics were treating Dyson for an overdose. Gillum was too inebriated to speak, though he later appeared fine and left the hotel without incident, according to the police report. So in these photos, you see medication everywhere. You also see some sort of white substance, an empty beer bottle, and what appears to be a blood pressure machine, perhaps brought by paramedics. Other photos showed stained sheets, oh Lord, and towels and more plastic baggies and pill bottles, but no images of Gillum, Dyson, or Mejias. So I do recall after this incident, the reported or reputed escort did do an interview with Out Magazine in regards to this. Out Magazine reminds us that on March 12th, Gillum was supposed to officiate a wedding in Miami Beach. He spent the day drinking, and at some point in the early evening, he decided to meet up with Travis Dyson. The two met at the modern South Beach. According to Gillum, when he told this to GQ, he said, he offers me something to drink. I'm not really sure like what it is and what's in it because I'm already kind of drunk. The last memory that I have is sitting up drinking, Gillum told GQ. Because I didn't take a drug test until 2 or 3 days later, I don't know if there was something in my drink, but all I know is I'm knocked out. At the point that I come back present, it's like 11 at night and I'm in the bathroom. I don't have any clothes on. I have no idea why, and I'm there with like 5, 6 police officers. He went on to say he did not knowingly consume drugs and didn't know that anyone had taken photos of him. He continued, he says, so at this point, I'm like, this is a setup. He said, while acknowledging he should have never been in the hotel room to begin with, but Dyson recalls a different story. So the reputed escort says, according to him, the pair first began to speak on Grindr. They spoke on Grindr a week or two prior and had met up, quote, multiple times for paid sexual encounters. According to him, Gillum took G and passed out, likely as mixed with the alcohol in Gillum's system. According to Dyson, the pair both had taken G on multiple occasions together. The third man who was found at the scene was allegedly another client who had a later appointment but found both of them in the hotel room overdosing and called the police. Dyson said that he had been impacted by the scandal as well, having broken off his engagement, withdrawn from nursing school, and turned to OnlyFans for an income. What precisely happened that night remains unclear. Wesley Lowry wrote for GQ, after learning that I had contacted Dyson for comment, the Gillums canceled our scheduled follow-up interviews and declined to respond on the record to Dyson's version of events. So I felt like it was necessary to give you this backstory because I do recall this story coming out back then, because it's interesting to hear what this person that was there is saying and claiming versus what Andrew Gillum has been saying in his initial interview with GQ and now what he's saying on The Breakfast Club. Because what he's saying on The Breakfast Club is pretty damning. And if this was the situation, why didn't he bring charges against this person, Tyson Davis? Why didn't he bring charges against him? If you feel like this person slipped something in your drink and maybe SA'd you, we don't know. You did say that you woke up and you were naked. It's interesting. One thing I will also point out that I noticed in this interview on The Breakfast Club, Tiffany Cross and Angela Rye come across so authentic, so professional. So does Andrew Gillum. But also, we have to remember that Andrew Gillum is a politician. So when he's speaking, a lot of times I'm like, it's very like politicians speak. And I'm just sort of like, it's not as relatable as these two other women. But I like the dynamic of this trifecta because he can give you the perspective of being a politician. They can give you the perspective of covering politics. Have you listened to their very first episode of the Native Land Pod? I'm going to give it a listen. I think this is going to be an interesting trifecta of thoughts and opinions. But what stood out to me was what Andrew Gillum had to say and the shocking news that Chris Cuomo said what he said to Angela Rye. Guys, we don't normally cover politics, but anytime it crosses over into pop culture, we do. Let's continue this conversation in the comment section. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on breaking news when we go live or when we upload. Thanks for watching.
You bring the lighter, I got the fuse. You make a fire, I'll ask you. Follow my lead, just watch the show.